Welcome to the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of deep tech entrepreneurship, company founders, and venture capitalists. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey. In each episode, we explore the minds behind groundbreaking technologies, the visionaries who dare to push the boundaries of innovation, and the investors who fuel the growth of tomorrow's game changers. Blurred, or you're looking blurred? Don't worry. At the end of the recording, it uses like some AI, some model distillation, quantization to upload the video in a higher quality.
Okay, got it. Yeah, as soon as the recording started, you got blurred. Like my video is fine to me.
Yeah, it's the same.
But
It's the same.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to start off.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of the Leadership Labs with DeepRec. Today's guest is Onur Ergin, who is a CTO at Footprint Technologies. On this conversation, we're going to discover how Onur was very much in the process of creating processes from scratch. We're talking communication frameworks, culture, documentation, tools, all the stuff that are needed to make a successful product and to make a successful company to be ready to scale for when the time is right. Before we get into that, though, I want to take it back. I want to talk about you. Why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. Gladly. Thank you for having me. So where do I start? I'm a Turkish millennial, and I've been living in Berlin for 16 years now. I'm a computer engineer by training, and I did my bachelor's and master's degrees in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned my PhD here in Berlin at the Technical University of Berlin. I worked as a research scientist for many years, and at some point I decided to switch to industry, and joined Daimler Trucks as a solution architect. And now for the past just about 2.5 years, I've been the CTO of Footprint Technologies.
Nice.
Yeah, that's basically who I am.
Nice. I mean, look, you've mentioned there. Obviously, there's a big shift. You've come from Daimler. You're now working with from Footprint, CTO, startup from a big corporate. How did you find that shift?
Oh yeah, the shift was interesting because coming from a huge organization with all settled, defined system and processes in place, to a young initiative, very young initiative that's just trying to learn how to lift its head up, right? It was very intense, and it was very fun actually also. So all the resources and the comfort of the big organization was now absent. That wasn't available. So we needed to work with what we had in hand. And you always try to make the best out of all the resources that you have, right? So for that, I needed to understand the business idea. I needed to figure out the direction that we should be going. And with this information, with this understanding, I started to design a system, implement the processes, and to enable to develop the technology, right, to achieve the business goals of the startup.
Yeah. Can I ask you quickly? You know, obviously, what was the compelling factor from leaving Daimler? You know, talking job security, good company, great brand, great reputation. You know, there's almost a case if you're working with scale ups and SMEs, right? It's not easier, but you know, doing a startup is more common, but you see a lot less entrepreneurs come out of like BMW, Daimler, Schaeffler Group. So what? How come you had no fear?
Yeah. So, good question, actually. And I need to really now think back like 2.5, 3 years ago, like what was my thought process. But I remember. So what I was thinking back then, Daimler was experiencing a shift in the strategy, and they were changing, um, let's say, the domains of the projects. They were redefining where the whole enterprise should be headed to for the next 5 to 10 years. And this caused in my team also a change of focus and projects as well. And I could see that in a few months I would be doing something different than what I was doing back then. Right. So I thought, okay, if I need to do something else anyway, then maybe I just choose myself what I want to do next. Right. So that was one thought that I had. But on the other side of this thought process, there's, as you mentioned, whole security of Daimler, all comforts, all like all of the resources of this big enterprise, right? It's
All of
it's
the
not
benefits.
all of the benefits. It's not little benefits, like anything. Like it's. I think that is like I had very very good conditions there, right? So it was not easy to give up on the conditions. Um, but I wanted to have um, I think I needed more focus at that time because of all these changes, shifts in the plans and strategies. Um, I was looking a little bit more for more focus, and I want to contribute more significantly to the goal that I was, or to the project that I was being involved in. And that was quite uncertain there. And in a startup, it's definitely certain. That's the goal of That's the reason of the existence of a startup, obviously. So I said, okay, I'm making a decision here. I'm choosing what I'm working on next, and that was the main thought process that I had, as far as I remember.
Nice. And then, I like not to say that a lot of
Mhm,
startups lack process, right? But in some cases, there's a lot of non-experienced leaders who go into startups, people who come straight out of university or research groups go into the
mhm,
startup world, right? You've had the
mhm,
luxury, well, you can call it a luxury maybe, of being with Daimler and then having the knowledge of, like, that's a company that's been successful to grow to an absolutely monster size. And
yeah.
there's elements
Mhm,
of that it's process, it's systems and process. Once the system and process fits and it works, in
mhm,
if it works in Dublin, it's going to work in Germany. If it works in Dublin and Germany, it's going to work in Turkey, right? The development processes, the communication processes, everything.
mhm.
You've been
That's
able to
correct. Mhm,
take that and that experience and try to implement it then as well in the early stages of footprint, right? Because it's one thing I often struggle with communication. I often struggle with follow up. So my frameworks are probably not where they should be, but I'm trying my best. I'm learning. I've got coaches, but
mhm.
really good to see that you're able to bring that in. Um,
That's correct. Yeah. Mhm,
yeah, I mean, look,
mhm,
let's talk about, like, the first one, and I guess it's the one that I think underpins not only development teams, but it underpins the communication between development and product, sales and product. It's sales, and sorry, it's communication and a communication framework. Talk to me about that. Like, what does that mean to you?
The communication framework.
Yeah,
Uh,
how you create methodologies of how you
oh yeah. Mhm,
engage cross team, stakeholder
mhm,
management, everything. I guess what's the routines? How often are you refreshing the company
mhm.
vision?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, for this, I mean, you just called it communication framework. So it is all communication, right? So you need to communicate in the right context with the right people at the right time to set up the processes and relay all the information, or even translate the information to one team to the other, from one team to the other one. So for me, individual discussions are very important. That's with everybody, every stakeholder, from the developers in the team to the decision givers in the business side, right? So I need to understand what is the goal, what is happening right now, and what is needed to be done next. Then I need to carry this to the team, and then we discuss it in the team. After we make sure that everybody has the understanding and they have like clarified all the questions that they might have regarding decisions, then we go on how to implement these things. And sometimes, and not in sometimes, it's often needs one-on-one discussions with everybody. So we discuss like the details of how to achieve this goal, what do we need, if if we have the skill sets in the team to achieve this goal. If we don't have the skill set, if we have it, great. If we don't have the skill set, then we figure out who is the best person or persons to upskill to the level that we can achieve our goals. And once we do this, then comes the whole analysis, right? So we start working on that, and then we figure out what is the cost of the plan that we have just made, and then I need to explain this cost to the stakeholders. So there's this much time needed, there's these resources needed, and these are the risks, and what happens if the risks appear, and how do we mitigate if anything happens. And so best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, most likely scenario, etc. So all these things needs to be clarified. And these are not the steps before we even start. It's like usually we figure out as we move on, right? So we start working on things and we start implementing things, and then we figure out, oh, okay, yeah, now we need this, next communication. Now we need that, next level of communication.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess something that I don't know if you do it, but do you even do, I hate to say it, but like pre-communication of communication, like the people that join Footprint know that this is how we liaise with our stakeholders, this is how seriously we take communication, this is the steps we do, and this is how we intend to deliver it, right? Is it that black and white?
No, absolutely not. Well, it depends on the context, right? If someone joins the team, then I mean, obviously we do the onboarding and introduce the let's say the recurring communication, like weekly meetings, daily meetings, if we have some, and what these meetings are for. And then we see like, oh, okay, how do we need to integrate this person into the existing team? Do we need regular meetings as a team, or within one team, or one-on-one? That all depends on the context and the function of that person, right? But it's not like we strictly define, okay, this is the meeting that you have to be present at. This is what we discuss in this meeting. No, that's very context dependent.
Okay, good. As
Mm-hmm.
customer to customer.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a good one there that you've mentioned. You've mentioned one-to-ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there, and again, for people who haven't had that experience of having a lot of one-to-ones or coming from an environment where one-to-ones were structured, like there's a big difference, and you know this, there's a big difference between coming into a room and saying, we've got 30 minutes and you just
Mm-hmm.
end up talking about the weekend social lives, right? People will say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, that's family. We're a family here. We get on great. We know each other." Ultimately, and I say I'm quite possibly controversial on this. I don't think families work in startups. And the reason why I say this is because you're going to rely on a small group of people to be high performers. And let's say, for example, if someone steals from you, you're going to have to fire them. Yes, if it's your brother, you're going to treat them differently. Or if your brother is, I don't know, drinking alcohol, he's acting up, right? You can put up with it. But as a startup, you need to make it high performing because you're limited resources, limited time. So I hate to say the family approach doesn't work. And then to link it back, I think a structured one to one, 30 minutes, 10 minutes on like what you done last week, 10 minutes on what you're going to do this week, 10 minutes on maybe future goal settings or potential performance improvements. Like, I mean, that's my personal take. What about yourself?
Um, just give me 1 second. My headset disconnected. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, I have the connection.
Yeah.
Repeat the
Good.
last thing that I
Where
missed
did
it.
you lose me?
Um, so last thing I heard was, yeah, you do these one-on-one, one-to-ones, and you do this 10 minutes what you have done last week, 10 minutes what you'll be doing this week, and 10 minutes what's your future plan.
Perfect.
And
And then
after
I'll just
that, I
say,
think,
what do you think about that? Like, how do you approach as an experienced leader,
mhm,
founder of a CTO of a startup? How do you approach a one to one?
yeah, right. So I would say I have my own style with the one-on-one, one-to-ones, and how do I do this is we start usually if you do this when you do this regularly, you remember what they've been working on last time you talked. And I asked for the updates, like, okay, are there any updates? How is it going? Any problems? Then we start talking about the work itself, the context itself, and as my colleagues explain me what problem they're working on right now and what's their solution, intended solution to that. I try to understand as much as I can in the way that they want to solve this problem. Well, first we have a diverse team, and we have like web development, mobile development, computer vision, AI, analytics, etc. So that's obviously the individual contributors are more knowledgeable in their area than I am, right? Um, so I understand what the exact approach they want to take on this, and I challenge them on these decisions. Like, okay, what if this happens? How do you know that this will work? And have you seen um, this in practice? Like, is anyone doing this, or is it something that we need to experiment with? So I ask these questions. I try to stimulate a little bit, like um, their thought process in the way that, okay, if somebody asks you this, like, what would be your response? So this leads to really interesting discussions, often to the points like the colleagues say, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't think about this aspect, and yeah, that's worth noting. And yeah, this is how we or how I choose to do the one-to-ones. And at the end, I always make sure that I ask the question if they need support, if I could help them in any way, or if they need support, what kind of connection I could provide them so that they can work more efficiently, or to make their work easier for them, basically. So it's less of a, okay, now report to me. What is your current plan? What's your next steps, but rather, okay, what's the problem? Do you have a solution? If it's not a straightforward solution, let's find a solution to this together. And yeah, it's not about just like solving the problem in the meeting, but figuring out the most likely way to find a solution.
Yeah, nice. I like that. It's very much challenging, putting the challenge to them. It's a big element of coaching, right? The phrase that I've heard for it is you don't you're the leader. You're not supposed to be the hero. You're supposed to be the hero maker. But if you keep telling people what to do, they will never obtain themselves the skills to become the hero. Um,
No,
so
no,
that's
that's an important thing. I need to tell them that, hey, you know your topic better than I do. I'm trying to understand. Now help me understand. And when we have problems, when we need solutions, let's work on solutions together. Don't feel isolated, and you don't need to get stressed about any of the problems, right?
yeah, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love that. Now look, let's go one on. We've got
Mm-hmm.
one to ones. We know how you give people a bit of coaching. Again, you're not the expert in their spaces, but at the start of a quarter, at the start of a new project, how do you work with them to set goals and expectations?
Yes, I allow them to set their own goals. I ask them like, what do you want to see like this is becoming, right? And this is, I mean, so the questions, one needs to be careful about asking questions. So this, the way the special one-to-one meetings and the way the questions asked should not be taken like, or should not make them feel like they are being interrogated, right?
Yeah,
It's but rather it should just make sure that, or you should demonstrate that this is actually working together, rather than like you reporting me so I assess your performance kind of thing. So if you build this confidence, then they feel more encouraged to like express their wishes, their guesses, right? Their educated guesses, or like their ideas on how to define the path that we are going. And they need to be empowered to do so. And then we follow the. I'm a big fan of methodologies like scientific methodology. That's like hypothesis, experiment, verification, and then we define our hypothesis. Then we define like how do we confirm our hypothesis, and then we see what the results come out as. And one thing that I make sure is that if one hypothesis turns out to be not the correct one, this is not a bad thing. This is a learning, right? So now we know what doesn't work, and we have other ideas. So let's use this learning to find a better idea next time. And nobody should be like feeling like they will get somehow punished or anything. Like there would be consequences of not doing the right thing at the first moment.
yeah. It's, I wanted to ask then as well. So you've got a good way of bringing into one to ones and upskilling. A good way to challenge people to think differently, to think about, is this reasonable? Do you do the same when it comes to goal setting? Like, and again, sometimes it works good, right? Someone comes in and says, "Oh, I want to build this new feature in 6 weeks."
Mhm.
You've got to be like, "Well, I mean, come on, right? How?" But if they talk through their process, you still have to almost
Mhm.
understand. But then in some cases, if someone says, "I'm going to do it in 6 months," you're also like, "Well, come on."
Well, yeah. So that's often like, okay, this is now stakeholder management, right? So one party comes to you like, hey, I have this idea. Let's implement this and see what happens. and that party is often the business team, right? And then
Yeah.
they come with wishes, or they relay client requests. Hey, the client asked this thing, can we do that, right? So then I start asking, like, why? Why do we want to do this? Uh, I make it clear that if something is possible, that they know it's possible, right? So, okay, sure, we can implement that thing, we can develop that product, or for that client only, customer only. But what's the benefit? So what is this going to bring to the business? And then this is already a thought stimulating question, right? So they need to have clear answers to this. And then I say, well, okay, now we are working on this, and that. Which one do you want to sacrifice? Which one do you want to deprioritize? So which risk do you want to take now, right? Because like everything that we have in plan has a value, because these are all discussed and decided. That's also like another challenge to the stakeholders, that they need to define, or they need to recognize the risk and the cost of their wishes. And then we say, okay, yeah, sure, let's do this, and I will. Uh, I'm obvious. I'm not oblivious about the technical development, right? So even though I'm not the one that's like hands-on developing every feature, I can estimate the time frame that it should take. One feature, for example, should take. And I say, okay, yeah, it should take, let's just say, like 2 to 4 weeks to implement this, and then we need to test, etc. And I tell them, and then the cost is that we delay other the other feature that we want to implement, and it is all the whole this, I know, 4 weeks of time. That's the cost. And then I bring this to the team, and I say, okay, there's this wish. In that moment, not everybody needs to be involved from the team, right? I'm bringing in the people that are more likely to work on that. And I say, okay, now, this is the request. Can we do this? Do you think this is feasible? Do you think it will have impacts, or like some effects on the existing implementation? Do we need to change anything in the existing, let's say, software or systems? And then I discuss with them, and then I verify if my time estimation was accurate. And after that, I figure out if I need to provide more information to the business stakeholders, or we can just start working on that. Um, it depends on the wish, of course. Like sometimes it is, let's say, plausible to start right away, and sometimes we decide to delay it for some time, because of the cost optimization, right? So cost is not only money here, and the time is also a cost. And if we need to, yeah, change our plans, change our roadmap, then I need to communicate this back to the stakeholders. And as a result of these discussions, sometimes we also reject implementing some features. We say, well, won't really work this way. It defines a new product, and we cannot, for example, it's an example, it defines a new product, and this is not our core product. So we should not do this, except that there's a very strong reason in the business side that we should definitely stop everything else and do this, right?
Nice. I
Mhm,
really like the way that you've
mhm,
even you take manpower, people power, and put that as a cost as well. You know, some
mhm,
people just think of software, but then, you know, if something goes wrong and someone's away from one of the core features, as you've mentioned, right? Something
mhm.
goes wrong, you could lose customers. You've lost money.
No, yeah, exactly. So um, what we want to do is we make sure that the systems and software that we develop works just as reliable as it works to all the customers. So the existing customers do not get impacted, and the new customers get the value that they are expecting.
Nice.
And of course, the goal is to continuously increase the value for all the customers.
Nice. Good. Really like that.
Mhm.
Like those elements of what you've mentioned, their communication, right? I would, because they're different parts of the business, I would call it a framework. You know, if
Mhm.
someone says, if so many people say X X X, our
Mhm.
response is going to be A, based on our communication framework that we have internally, right? That's how we work. That's how we operate. Um, I talk about frameworks in everything, and how important they are. Kind of like playbooks is another
Mhm.
way to use the word framework, I guess. But that's something that I really like. Um, let's go a layer probably under
Mhm.
communication now, and look, something that definitely doesn't earn the headlines ever. But again, I'm pretty sure this would have been done extremely well at Daimler given their success. But it's documentation, right? It's nobody likes to do it. It's the admin task. You know, you don't study computer science to document your work. No, nobody does, right?
Uh, Actually, yes, documentation is the chore of software development, right? So nobody does. Let's say many people don't do it the way that they should be doing it, and it's very controversial. Documentation is a very controversial topic. In terms of study, I must say I remember I've taken, like, in one of the classes that I've taken, one part was documenting the project. So it was some, I don't remember, I studied early 2000s. um, I don't remember the name of the class, but so we developed this group project, and one part was documentation. And I remember, like, everybody hated it, right? Nobody wanted to do this. Nobody wanted to write text. That everybody wanted to write code. And it wasn't only the university time. It's still like this, right? When
Right.
you
It,
ask
it
people
could
to
it could be
document,
worse. You're in computer science. Think back. There used to be manual testers that would have to document 1,000 tests.
true, true, right? But documentation is important. You need to keep, and up to date documentation is important. And keeping track of this documentation, if something, to identify if something needs to be updated, and it's also cost. Documentation is time taking from feature development, basically product development, right? But it needs to be there if you want to continue working at the pace that you're working right now. The key documentation must be there. The way that I approach documentation is, for the first, I identify the frame of the documentation, like to what granularity, to what detail we need to document. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to document every activity, like a diary of the, the developers. We don't need that, right? But we always start with an onboarding document. I ask the colleagues, okay, let's say we hire a new person to help you work on this project or this feature. So I asked them to write the onboarding guide for it. So what do they need to first do to prepare their development environment? What are the dependencies of the thing? And what is the architecture that we have used in this part of the software? And once we make sure that we started with that, we have continuous discussions, of course, as we continue developing. And during these discussions, we can identify, okay, this activity that we did needs to be documented, needs to be added to the documentation, because, I mean, we can forget this, right? Or we need to change something here that we have done, or we have taken a special approach. whatever, and you're on holiday and somebody needs to contribute to that or make a change. So they need to know where to look at. So I asked them to update documentation in a way that is not too costly time wise to them,
Yeah.
and still enough to convey the information. But I give a lot of value to the documentation. It is it you don't know when you need the documentation, but when you need the documentation, it's
And
a
it's
it's a
not
rush.
there.
It's not there. It's not there. It's alarming, right?
But you know what it is? It's again, documentation is a framework. It
Mhm,
makes a job. That's like
mhm,
if one of your senior engineers broke their arm and can't write code, can't come to work, someone needs to go in and say, right, I'm gonna have to take this over. What am I going to do? Again, similar to what we do, we have documentation frameworks that we follow for when someone goes on holidays in case something
mhm,
happens, right? And it's very, even if someone is just sick, but they're sick for 3 days, you know.
mhm,
But if it's core feature,
mhm.
you got someone's got to be able to fill in. But no, it's good to, I guess, just really talk about the importance of it. You know, it's not spoken about enough.
But that's also part of the whole system. So documentation alone is not enough for doing this, right? Um, Documentation works great for or as an onboarding guide first and the key information. But if somebody just unexpectedly becomes absent for 3 days, 5 days, whatever, and somebody else needs to contribute to that part that they had to interrupt contributing to, um, you cannot make sure that you always have the recent documentation for that particular part only. But you still implement systems that information, this knowledge is shared continuously within the team. So two things. I hope they are the standards right now in the community, and I hope everybody is following this, not only in our organization but globally. One of them is continuous catch-up meetings. So in the for example, if you're using Scrum framework, they are called daily stand-ups. You make sure that people join daily stand-ups and they explain their current work in a few minutes, right? And how do they do, what do they change, so that everybody hears, at least knows like what that person is changing. And the other one is your DevOps practices. If you implement a good DevOps framework and you work with pull requests, for example, then you make sure that your code is being reviewed by somebody else, and you make sure that the code is always reviewed. It's required. You don't confirm you don't just merge your own feature on your own without anyone seeing that piece of code, and that's already helping a lot, right? If another developer is looking at a peer's work, sees the list of the files that are affected, and goes over the code, like what is the change that was done in the code, uh, that is that's already helping a lot. And also from the project management side, you make sure that each feature is defined as small as possible. Like you write, for example, tickets, and then you define the features in discrete steps that they could be individually deployed, so that your pull requests, your code reviews become smaller as well. Um, if you don't do this, and if you define the frame of the feature too big, and the developer needs to work on it like for 3 days and changing 20 files, and then a big pull request goes out, that's not as effective as like keeping this like slicing this to like works of 1 day, like, and splitting this 3 day work of pull requests to 3 1 day worth of pull requests, and feeding the information in smaller chunks to other peers. This is working way better.
Nice, nice. Really, really good to have this stuff implemented from the start.
Hmm.
particularly when you're so busy, right? Too many people just jump in and take feature development, and ultimately the things that drop down in the priority list are documentation, communication to my team, to the entire business. You know, people don't get one to ones. They don't
Hmm.
have time to sit with their leaders because they don't have time to set them goals. They don't have time to set them expectations. You
Hmm.
then struggle to upskill them. And then sometimes, you know, because you're just so bummed up thinking we gotta release, it's these things that can create a better process to lead
Hmm.
to a smoother release. And actually, it would lead to a process that you could even go on holidays and the release
Hmm.
could be done when you're not even there. But it like these are fundamental. Um,
Yes, yes, absolutely. Hmm.
just ready to close it off, owner,
Hmm.
with some quick fire questions. Are you ready to go?
All right, let's go.
Good, good. Um, if you were to say you had three non-negotiables when it comes to leadership, what would they
Hmm.
be?
Three non-negotiables. I have to think if I have a lot of non-negotiables or not that many.
Right.
But if I give you like a prioritized list, no, I don't have a lot of non-negotiables. I'm a strong believer in common sense, and common sense is common sense, right? So um, it by definition it brings a global understanding for the common benefit. Uh, but what I would not um, what I would not sacrifice on is, in the first place, I would say it's empathy, right? So if you're working with a team, if you're at the individual level or at the group level, that's we are still everybody is a human. Everybody has their own worries and thoughts and ideas in their heads, and we should never remove the human aspect from the work, no matter how technical the work is, no matter how little you need to like speak to people because of the nature of their work. um, Still the human part must be there, the empathy is there, and you need to make sure that the satisfaction of the team is maintained the whole time. The team needs to stay motivated. It's not good for the business, it's good for the person as well. It's a big difference if you're doing your job with motivation or if you're doing your job only because you have to, right? So empathy is, I would say, my number one thing to maintain an environment that everybody feels comfortable expressing their concerns, thoughts, and ideas and stay motivated. Um, this would then make them more reliability, right? So reliable. So I would say the reliability would be the next thing for me. So I would
Do you think
expect,
reliable has to go two ways?
yes, yes, true, true. Rely. I mean, you should be reliable, and you expect other people to be reliable.
Right.
But this actually brings like this creates a team feeling, right? So if you feel yourself reliable, and if you expect the others to be reliable, then the team becomes reliable. And to be
Right.
reliable,
High performance.
uh, high performance is, I don't think particularly use this term. It's high performance sounds to me a little comparative. Everybody has their own pace. I would say, like at the team level, yes, high performance, right? But at the individual levels, it feels like putting pressure on people to become high performance. I think high performance becomes the consequence of the systems that you built in and all the trust that you built in. in the team. That also touches empowerment. The team needs to be feeling empowered, right? To give their own decisions, to recognize the significance of their contribution. So that's another one. And if I conclude, I think my third non-negotiable would be the ethics. I think ethics is something that I would never sacrifice on. That is this I'm struggling to choose the right word here. So ethics is the combination of multiple factors like your integrity, your maintaining confidentiality, your transparency. Like you need to maintain high ethics to build trust within the team and outside of the team. Like with
Yeah.
all the stakeholders, you need to be recognized as an ethical peer, that they know that they can trust you, right? And they know that they can rely on you. So I think ethics would be probably the number one non-negotiable that I could name.
And if you were to recommend a book, a podcast, or a piece of content for other leaders or other listeners, what would you recommend?
Okay. So for the content,
I mean, it doesn't have to be one of each, just one.
okay.
Well, I appreciate some people are podcasts, some people are books, some people are movies, right?
All right. What I do, I have my regular night walks. Like before, when I finish everything, before I go to sleep, before I finish my day, often, pretty much every day, I go out and take a walk in fresh air. So during my walks, I listen to podcasts, and one of my favorite podcasts is called the CTO podcast. That's just about 1 hour long, and they're the CTOs of often Silicon Valley companies that are recognized to be successful. They are talking about their personal experiences, their um, their history of how they have been doing the things the way that they are doing. So that's an interesting podcast that I like listening to, and I would actually recommend it further to anyone that's interested in hearing those stories. And this is less technical. That's also making it a little bit more easier to listen and more fun to listen. So that's a like walking activity for me. Listening to that podcast.
Your walking sounds.
Yeah.
But look, Onur, that takes
Mhm.
us up for time here.
Mhm.
Thank you for being a guest on this episode of the Leadership Labs. It's been an absolute inspiring show. Everyone listening, it's
Well, it
Onur
was a pleasure
Ergin,
for me.
CTO
Mhm.
at Footprint Technologies.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Cool.
Yeah,
No worries, no worries. Thank you.
cool.
All the best and
Yeah.
have a good day.
Likewise. Talk to you later.
That concludes another enlightening episode of the Leadership Labs podcast. If you found today's episode thought-provoking and informative, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Labs on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you once again for joining us on this journey through the Leadership Labs. Until next time.